Mary,
Yes,
can you hear us? Obviously you can.
I can't hear
Thank
you.
you.
What did you say?
Wait a minute.
Okay.
If she's hearing us through the mic,
Okay, so you're good. Krista?
What's that?
No, I was just checking to make sure that you could hear,
Well, you're very muffled.
but you can hear.
Yes, I can hear.
Okay.
But sometimes it's really hard to hear what's being said. The last time was really difficult.
Okay.
So if it stays like that, then I'll log off.
Okay.
Because if all I can hear is muffling, then I'm not hearing what's going on in the meeting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just make sure you're muted too when you're not talking, Mary, because we get some feedback a little bit. Krista, are you there?
I can't hear you right now. It's very, very muffled.
it's coming off the webcam is what it is.
Yeah, we can hear you. We're
Okay.
gonna get somebody to call you, Krista, and open up a phone so that you can hear.
Okay.
You're very hard to hear, Lisa.
Yeah,
I can hear
nothing I can do.
Kristen clear as well.
I can hear Mary clear as a bell too.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the session of Quispamsis Town Council on March 19th. This is our first meeting in over a month since we don't have a meeting at the beginning of the month due to March break. I hope everyone had a safe and enjoyable March break, whether traveling away or staying at home. And I want to thank Councillor Olson for serving as chair of the February 20th meeting in Quispamsis Town Hall in my absence and in the absence of the deputy mayor. And also, earlier this month, the town of Quispamsis moved its permit process exclusively online. This means any building renovation, development, water and sewerage permit applications must be completed using a new development and building permit application portal. Previous forms are no longer available. The new online portal is expected to make the application and approval process faster and more efficient for applicants and for staff. Thank you to our Development Officer, Dwight Colburn, and his team for helping to take our permit application process to the next level. Thank you, Dwight. I was very proud to speak on behalf of the town this year at KV celebration of International Women's Day at the Qplex. We had an excellent crowd that engaged and interacted with our wonderful guest speaker, President and CEO Mary Butler of the New Brunswick Community College. Ms. Butler's remarks were honest and heartfelt, and they aligned extremely well with this year's theme, Inspire Inclusion. The drive for women's equality in life is ongoing and must continue. Since our last meeting, Black History Month came to a close. One of the many wonderful events in February came up at UNB St. John campus, where a section of previously unnamed roadway is set to be called Abraham B. Walker Way. Abraham Beverly Walker was a New Brunswicker who became the first Black Canadian lawyer. I was gifted a book about Mr. Walker by its author, Peter Little, who wrote a comprehensive biography about the successes and challenges Mr. Walker faced in his life and career. It is an excellent read. Although I was away for this significant recognition, I attended the unveiling of the headstone at the Church of England Cemetery on Thorne Avenue, which was also very well attended. We will continually recognize and honor our Black community and their contributions, which have helped shape the community, region, province, and country in which we live. With that said, I'd like to express my deepest condolences to the family of Wanda Roach of Crescent Valley on her sudden death. She will be a huge loss to her family and to her community. And just a reminder that March is Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. If you are between the ages of 50 and 70, you should ask your doctor for a colonoscopy. If you have a family history of colorectal cancer, you are advised to have a colonoscopy 15 years of age younger than when your family member was diagnosed. For all others, there are free take-home FIT tests that you can ask your doctor for at his office. Lastly, spring officially sprung today. As the forecast improves, our warm weather amenities will be opening soon for the season. Keep an eye on our social media platforms for details. And please help keep our community beautiful by picking up debris in culverts and on streets. Let's keep every neighborhood the neighborhood you want to choose to live in. And I am looking for an approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Bigger. Seconded by Councillor Luck. Thank you. On the question, please vote now.
She left.
Did she leave? Okay. Motion carried 6-0. Could I have the treaty acknowledgement and moment of reflection, please? Councillor Olson, do you have that on your screen? Okay.
We would like to.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. I did have his mic light on, but his mic was not working. And I was excited to give the mayor's comments, so I went before I did the approval of the agenda, so that item is checked off. I am looking for a disclosure of interests. Seeing that there are none, we will move on to number 5. Number 5 is presentations, replacement of a ladder truck. And Chief Michael Boyle is here to discuss this. And I see Deputy Chief Sean White. I see Mr. Jarvis from the town of Rossay, who is also the town rep administrator, and Captain Jim LeBlanc as well. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here this evening. And certainly the fulsome report that was included in our package was certainly interesting, and we can talk about that later. So I will turn over the mic to you.
Council, and there is a presentation, I believe. There was a PowerPoint presentation that I had as well that I don't know if you have that one, but I don't absolutely need it. But what I wanted to talk about tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about replacement for our ladder truck, because it is a significant investment for the fire department and for the towns as well. And really, this is continuing a conversation that had started back in June with the fire board, in September with the Joint Finance Committee, and then last month with the town of Rossay to really talk about the need for this replacement. So when we talk about the replacement of a ladder truck, and you would have seen in the report, is I won't go over the entire report, but it's really to talk about the growth in the community, the current state of the fire department, where we're at looking forward, and then the recommendations of what the options actually are for replacement. So if you look at the growth in the communities, and there's there is some population growth. There is some growth in the number of residents, the number of housing starts that are developing. But realistically, the one that really interests us from the fire department perspective is the type of buildings that are being built. So lots of housing starts, garden homes, all those types of things, but all you have to do is take a drive around and look at the types of buildings that are going up. 4-story apartment buildings, they seem to be going up almost anywhere that someone can fit them in. Beyond that, we do have a lot of big box stores, Canadian Tire, the Superstore, Sobeys. Even when you look down into some of the industrial area where the gymnastics and those places in there, that there is a significant need for us to have a ladder truck. So we're kind of looking forward into the future of where are we actually going to be 15, 20 years from now when it comes to the type of construction that is being built. So the community is changing. I think we're aware of that, and has changed significantly in the last decade. If you were to go back, like 10 to 15 years, the largest building we had would have been the apartment building on the Rossay Road. And then if you look at like Parkland in the Valley and all of the other developments that have gone on through then. So when we started to look at the fire department and look at our apparatus from a capital perspective, is realize that, okay, our ladder truck was designed and built and delivered designed in 2008, delivered in 2009. Trucks typically have about a 15-year lifespan, and I'll get into where that actually comes from. Engine 1 was built and delivered in 2011. Again, looking into that 15-year lifespan, that we realized, okay, we've got 2 significant pieces of apparatus that are due to be replaced very close to each other. Then, of course, when we started to look at what are the cost of apparatus now compared to what they were 3 to 5 years ago, there is a significant increase. So maybe we'll just, we'll skip ahead a little bit there. And we'll stop right here. So we realized that we need to make an investment in the fire department, but how are we going to manage this? Because worst case scenario was going to be us coming to the councils and saying, listen, we have 2 trucks that need to be replaced. It's going to be $5 to $6 million, and what are we going to do with that? So when you look at the operation of the fire department, Quint 1, the ladder truck, goes to all fire incidents. It goes to structure fires and chimney fires. Engine 1 is kind of the workhorse. So it goes to car fires, accidents, service calls, medical calls. It kind of does everything else. So what we tried to look at is, okay, how do we manage this model and what changes can we actually make, understanding that if we were to assign all of the fire calls to the ladder truck, which would be structure fires, chimney fires, vehicle fires, anything on fire the ladder is going to go to, is we can then, we have options to repurpose apparatus within the department to change their role. And it kind of sounds a little bit ridiculous if you call a truck rescue one instead of engine one, all of a sudden the standards don't apply. But that's because when I get into talking about underwriters, is they are worried about the actual fire risk. And we'll go to the next slide, please. So when we talk about regulations and standards that govern fire departments, is there's a few different organizations that look after that. The one we are most concerned about is the Fire Underwriters Survey. So they're the ones that do an assessment on a community, evaluate the fire department, evaluate the water system, and they give you a grade. So the insurance companies, it's a complex process, which even though they explain it to me, I don't fully understand it, but they use that grade to determine the insurance rates for a community. So our fire department has the highest grade we can get. We have a 3B. The only way we could do any better is if we put hydrants throughout the entire community. The fire department is as good as it's going to get when it comes to that insurance grading. The other thing that we've done is completed the Superior Tanker Shuttle in the fall of last year. So, and just to brag a little bit about that, there is about 17% of fire stations in the province that, or sorry, 3% in the province that hold that rating, and 17% in Atlantic Canada. It's not fire departments, it's fire stations. So like our 2 stations are each counted as one. So from the fire underwriters' perspective, we're doing everything we can. If you read the report, I did talk a little bit as well about the National Fire Protection Association, and they have all kinds of standards when it comes to managing and operating a fire department, getting into UL, and those types of things. So we'll go to the next one. So the fire underwriters have produced a technical bulletin, and I'm not going to read everything that's on these next slides, but the important one to take away from this one is that it is very hard to judge the condition of a fire apparatus based on what it looks like sitting on the floor, because they're kept clean, and when you walk in, they always look clean, they look like they're in great shape, and you may wonder, it's like, okay, well, why is this thing being replaced? It looks fantastic. But we treat our trucks really the worst way you can treat a truck is we start it cold, we run it hard, and then we park it again. So there's all these different components. There's the pump components, the actual motor components, there's the ladder, all of these things that are used very harshly, and they wear down, and you just, the outward appearance doesn't judge what the condition of what the truck actually is. So the fire underwriters and FPA, they've researched it to say up to 15 years, a fire truck is about 90% reliable. So it's unlikely to break down. You get past 15 years, all of a sudden that likelihood starts to increase. So then you get into how much risk do you actually want to take on as a community. And we'll go to the next one, please. Again, I won't spend a whole lot of time on this one, but again, the fire underwriters give guidance on whether or not a community needs to have a ladder truck, and that's based on the buildings within the community. So the short answer is we do need a ladder truck. And we'll go to the next, please. So this is where kind of the real conversation starts. And we're following the standards set out by fire underwriters, set out by NFPA, and they talk about that 15-year replacement cycle. And sometimes the conversation goes like, why 15 years? It's like, well, we're following their lead on it. They're the ones who do the research. They're the ones who set the recommendations and set the standards. So what they're saying is 15 years, the life of a truck or the service life can be expanded if you apply to fire underwriters, and they'll go through an assessment of it, and then that will extend the life to 20 years. So we'll go to the next one, please. So we're bound a little bit because of the type of community that we're in. So without going through that whole chart, it talks about major cities, medium-sized cities, and then rural areas. So if you're in a rural area, the rules aren't quite as tight. Because we're in a medium-sized city, is based on the, I know we're towns, but we're calling ourselves a medium-sized city based on populations and service, is we are within that 15 years. with the possibility for an extension to 20 years. And we'll go to the next one. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that part as best as I can, but I also want to be clear that there's no provincial legislation that says we have to do this. Like if the truck hits 16 years, no one's going to run in and shut us down. So there's no provincial legislation. There's no laws we're breaking by operating a truck that actually goes beyond its service life. It's very much going into those NFPA standards and then getting into the underwriter standards as well. And we'll go to the next one. So just like everything else, whether it's Zambonis or plows, or if you want to buy a minivan, you can't get them. And it's the same thing with fire trucks. So to replace a fire engine, you're looking at about 1 to 2 years to actually replace it. To replace a ladder truck, you're into the 3 to 4 year range. And whether that was all from the pandemic or other challenges, I'm not really sure of, but we're talking to manufacturers and they're telling us these are the timelines. So, and when I was in front of Rossay Council, I said, if you gave me $10 million tonight, I could not go get a new fire truck because they're not out there. They're not available. So there's a lot of procurement challenges. And then what's happening is that other cities are running into issues where their trucks are older, they're breaking down, and then they're making emergency purchases, which is the last thing that I would want to do is come to you and say, I need $2 million and we need to find a truck somewhere. It's not going to be the one we want. It's not going to serve the purpose, but that's where we're at. So all the same challenges that everyone else is having when it comes to procurement and obtaining, especially vehicles. And we'll go to the next one, please. So realistically, I would have loved to have talked about this in our 2024 budget preparation, but this time, like when we were into that last year, I don't think we really were aware of the reality of it, and things kind of started to happen fast, especially in the fall after we were throughout that budget process. But with the manufacturers and probably with a lot of other industries, is they used to increase the cost of a fire apparatus annually, and now they're going up almost quarterly. So it's kind of like one of those things is every time the longer we wait, the price goes up and the price goes up. And the last thing I would want to have us do is order the same truck in 2026 that we could have got in 24, but we're paying more in 26 than if we had actually ordered it now. There are some emission standard changes coming that probably we can't avoid, and that may impact the price as well. You're into U.S. dollar fluctuation, and then we could probably talk about the prepayment at the end of the presentation, and I'll speak to that as best I can, and we'll go to the next one. So when we start talking about what are the options, one option is to do nothing. We can just say, you know what, we're not going to worry about it and we're not going to do anything. What happens then is that we had our fire underwriters assessment in 2023 with another one due in 2028. If we do nothing, when the fire underwriters arrive, they won't consider that truck. To them, that isn't there, and then that will play into the insurance rates, as they'll just say, you don't have the fire trucks that you need, you're going to lose your rating, insurance rates eventually are going to go up, and that's kind of the impact of that. So when we talk about options, we are going to have to apply to extend the service life of Quint 1 no matter what we do. Because even if we order the truck today, it's not going to be here, by the end of the year. So we need to do that. So my primary recommendation is we order the ladder truck with a delivery somewhere around 2027, 2028. We recertify Quint 1, and that will kind of carry us over until that truck actually arrives. That would be my first recommendation. The other option is to recertify Quint 1, but not do anything right now and kind of hope things get better. That maybe production improves, maybe prices go down. I don't know how realistic that one actually is. And then finally, is just we kind of wait and see what happens. And we'll go to the next one. So when you start talking about timelines, and I realize the challenge of what we're asking is we're asking to purchase something 4 years from now, but put the order in it for it now. And then we're into how do you manage that as municipalities, and it's a lot of money, and there's a lot there's a lot to that, but that's just the reality right now. That, and I'm sure it's with other pieces of equipment that you probably had to purchase as you're making the order long before it's actually going to arrive. But right now we are in pretty good shape that if we order the truck in 2024, we will most likely have it before Quint 1 ages out of the 20 years. So they're a little bit tight, but I think if we do it, we will actually, things will actually work out for us. When that truck arrives, then we have other options of what we, how we change a response, what we do with the, the resources that we actually have right now. And we'll go to the next one. So our recommendation is we go ahead with the order for a new ladder truck, recommending that we get a tandem truck versus the single axle that Quint 1 is right now, and recommending a minimum of a 100-foot ladder truck. Understanding that the next ladder truck, again, is going to be here for 15 to 20 years. So trying to forecast out what is the community going to look like 15 to 20 years from now. And we'll go to the next one. So just talking a little bit about ladder trucks specifically, I won't go too far into it, but there are different options. There's a single axle that will limit the length of the ladder. Tandem obviously gives you longer ladder. Some of them, we call them a straight stick, and that's the one on the top. That's a ladder truck that doesn't have the bucket on the end. And the platform, the one on the bottom, that's what Quint 1 is right now. It's just mounted a little bit differently, but it does have that platform on it that just gives you more utility and more function for the fire department. And we'll go to the next one. Like I said, we understood the challenges of what we were facing, and having 2 trucks requiring to be replaced in a very short time frame probably wasn't realistic. So we really said, okay, how do we actually do this, and how do we be smart with this and manage what we have, knowing we have to buy something. But I like to look at it as saying, hey, I'm saving you $2 million. I don't think you would look at it that way, but we're looking at a $3 million bill versus a potentially $5 million bill. So that's how we're trying to manage our resources that way. And then the next apparatus replacement isn't, until almost into the 2030s. So there is a gap in there. And we'll go to the next slide. So just to summarize, Quint 1 is reaching the end of its service life. It can be recertified, but it's going to take us right until the end when the new truck actually arrives. It's very difficult to obtain apparatus, and that's why we're going through this process now. The community is changing, and it's growing, and it's not only growing out, it's actually growing up. And when the kind of the last bullet there is, I was thinking of, Your Worship, your comments in the November meeting of talking about strategic planning and looking forward to the future, and investments, and those things are needed for the community to actually grow. And when I think about a ladder truck, to me, it's infrastructure. When you build a new big apartment building, you need streets, you need water. Well, this is another investment that, worst case scenario, something happens in that building, we have the resources to actually manage it. So that's everything I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions as best that I can.
Thank you, Chief Boyle. And certainly, as I say, when I went through it, and as mayor of this community, safety is paramount. That is something that we have to answer to. And the protection of lives and property, which is the responsibility and the duty of the employees at Fire and Rescue. And I also believe in equipping our protective services with the proper equipment, proper training, because that is what keeps you safe, your members safe, and what keeps our community safe. And with an increasing population, and we are continuing to grow, and as you've already identified, the buildings that we have now are different than what they were 15 years ago. They're going up, we're not spreading into the large neighborhoods that we once were. So certainly keeping those things in mind and having that as part of your research, it's rather unsettling to think that delivery time is 4 years out, but I know that that's with so many things. But on a personal note, I know that in our towns, your home insurance is also less expensive if there are hydrants. And that's ideal, for fire fighting. And I know that you've battled a couple of fairly bad fires over the past couple of weeks within our community, and for that, we're very grateful, and thank you to the force for that. But I'm going to see if anyone else would like to make a comment, but thank you for your delivery today. Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Chief, for the report and your entourage that you've brought with you. It's like bringing your enforcers along with you. Thanks so much for this. I just wanted to refresh my memory from my days with you guys on the fire board. You talk about the long wait time for having a truck delivered. Isn't it true that there's only a couple of really options even in terms of where you can procure these from in North America?
Right, so there's, and I meant to mention that, there's no Canadian manufacturers of ladder trucks. There's probably 4 manufacturers, but realistically, there's 2 main ones. So, and again, everything slowed down when COVID happened. And then, of course, what happened is the pandemic started to slow down, and fire departments, okay, let's ramp everything up again, and everyone ordered trucks. And it's not only that, it's also the technology that goes into them, and all processors and all of that stuff. So we are very limited in where we can actually obtain them from, which, especially ladder trucks. Engines, there's more options for that, but obviously we're talking about a ladder truck, so.
And if I recall, you even had the chance to go and tour a facility, and they were pretty adamant that time is of the essence. If you want one of these by a certain horizon, then
Yeah, so it was Deputy White and Division Chief Codling. They actually
yes.
went to the Sutphin and Pierce manufacturing plants and kind of saw firsthand, and they saw the challenges of it, and it's just that's the reality. And I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years, just like no one else really does, especially when it comes to manufacturing and that sort of thing. So.
Well, thank you. Your Worship, I'm prepared to make a motion. There might be more discussion to be had, but if that's appropriate.
That's fine, Councillor Bigger, and I know that Ms. Brandon also wants to speak on this, so we can make the motion and then have her speak.
Okay, I move that council authorize the Kennebecasis Valley Fire Department to proceed in principle with the order of the replacement ladder truck in 2024, with delivery within 36 to 48 months, with 1/3 of the final purchase price being included in each of the 2025, 2026, and 2027 budgets, and transferred to reserves each year until payment is due and the apparatus is received, the estimated annual amount being $587,000.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Councillor Miller, were you seconding that?
Yeah, I'll second it, and on the question, please.
Okay.
Oh, on the question. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. I just wanted to point out too, the photograph there showed the difference between a 75 and a 100-foot ladder truck, and the larger one is the Hampton truck, just so you know, if I'm correct, right?
That one is actually Amherst, I think.
It was
They were
Amherst, yeah.
driving through, so that's Amherst.
Yeah.
They were driving through the community they stopped in.
Okay,
Yeah.
so but that's the difference right now. We have a 75
We have
foot, and
we
that's a
have
100 foot. That's,
Yeah.
It's a big difference for fighting the fires. Thank you.
I've actually been up in that 75-foot truck. It's high. Ms. Brandon, would you like to speak to council?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Because I'm
Yes,
having
yes,
trouble
we-
hearing you. But,
yes, we can.
Okay, you can hear me. So, just a couple of things that I just want everyone to kind of understand the impacts of this decision. I do have concerns that it's being brought forward outside of our budget process. And we probably should have had some discussions about this because it is a significant cost for our budget. Quispamsis pays 60% of the fire costs. So with an estimate of $2.9 million, we're talking about $1.74 million worth of impact to our operating budget. If, being that this is coming tonight, if we would have had some time, if we were going to borrow, which would have been my first recommendation, we would have needed to apply for the capital borrowing. We would need to go through all of that whole process before any sort of tender or purchase agreement could be entered into on behalf of that. But in speaking with our acting CAO today and the significant lead time that's required for this, I just want council to kind of understand the impacts over the next few years going forward. So again, talking about a 1.7, almost $1.75 million expenditure for us, what we are recommending is that starting with our 2025 budget, so 2025, 2026, and 2027, that we would be adding in a line item related to this piece of equipment for about $587,000 each year for those 3 years, transfer that money into reserve so that we have the funding for that when in 2027, and I'm hearing maybe 2028, when this piece of significant important equipment is ready to be received, that we would then have the money to fund that at that point in time. Again, through our budget process, we have had reserve transfers reduced. We have had, this would be a significant impact to each of our ongoing 3-year budgets. So 1 cent on the tax rate is about $254,000. So we're looking at about 2.3 cents per year on the tax rate to increase it for this one piece of equipment. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone kind of understands that with this decision that you'll be making tonight, there are long-term budgetary implications going forward. And I won't be able to probably hear any questions, but that's really just, I wanted everyone to understand the full financial impact of the decision that you're potentially about to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. Other comments? I see that there are none. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just really wanted to thank Chief Boyle and I guess you and all your staff. I know recently we've had a few fires and, thankfully everyone's got out safe. And I just really want to thank you and the departments for the selfless work that you do. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So the motion is on the table. It was moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Councillor Miller. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried unanimously, 6-0. Thank you very much for being here this evening.
Great. Your worship and members, I do appreciate it, realizing what we're asking, but we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Item number 7, minutes of the previous meeting, February 20th, 2024, regular meeting. Councillor Olson. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you. Item number 8, unfinished business. 8A, response to Quispamsis application for funding, $9 million under the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation Housing Accelerator Fund Program, otherwise known as HAF. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, Your Worship. I would move that we council direct town officials to proceed with their plans to meet with CMHC's Municipal Relations Team to discuss the specifics of why the town's application was denied and further to explore ways the town can potentially partner with them to support the town's housing objectives, which includes development of affordable, inclusive, equitable, and diverse housing options.
It's been moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the motion too. What I'm concerned, I'd like to copy more people than that. So from the analysis that I did that's attached there, unless I'm incorrect, it looks like all the funding has gone to federal liberal areas. So maybe just a coincidence, but it looks kind of strange. So Miramichi didn't get any that I found. We didn't get any. The Southwest didn't get any. So when you talk about politics and whatever they want to call it, there's something strange here. So I would like this copied and maybe I got something wrong. I put down as many things I saw from the housing affordability, whether it's Campbellton, Bathurst, whoever, St. John. I'm not saying they didn't deserve any, but we got zero. Graham and Ann, St. Andrews got zero. I saw nothing in Miramichi. So something's not right here. So I think this response should not just go back to the gentleman that wrote this, but to every federal MLA in New Brunswick, because this doesn't look right. So I could be wrong. So if somebody wants to correct me and show where a blue riding got something, but when you're talking politics, this is our money too. It's our taxpayer money. So I'm very just concerned that we got ours in right off the bat. We were in August. We did it full. We thought we had a great chance. And thank you. No, thank you. No explanation, just that everybody else asked for money. I saw how much Campbellton got. I saw how much Tracadie got. I saw how much Bucktouche. I'm not saying they didn't deserve any money, but when you talk about a growing community, who's looking for housing, I think we fit in there. We have one of the fastest growing communities in New Brunswick. So I think this goes more than just to the person that said equitable, because I think this has to get escalated to other groups, because it's just not us. Unless I'm wrong, Toboquit got nothing. I know I saw the Southwestern mayors got nothing. So it makes zero sense, except it's a whole political game, and I dislike politics terribly. And especially when things like this come up, it just, something looks wrong. So I'd like to copy more than just this person. I want every federal New Brunswick MLA to get a copy of this and explain why. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I don't know if my memory serves me correctly or not with the actual numbers. I believe I read that there were about 517 applications that went in, and I think 179 received funding. I don't know. I didn't look at the net over the country to see what party politics they were or involved with, but
I only looked at New Brunswick. Sorry.
okay. Okay, moving on. Councillor Olson. Who made the motion on that?
I did.
Councillor Thompson, do you want to amend that motion?
To include what Councilor Miller said? Yes. The 10 MPs. Yep. Yes. Councilor Lutz.
Okay. First of all, we'll vote on the amendment. How many people you can? To copy all of the MLAs in the province.
Is it MLAs or MPs?
MLAs, oh, it would be MPs, MPs,
Members of Parliament?
yeah.
MPs.
The federal members of Parliament?
So we vote on the amendment.
So through our procedural learnings this afternoon, it is appropriate to vote on the amendment first. And we can do this by show of hands if you like. Madam Clerk, could you please raise your hand if you are in favor?
Favor of the amendment?
Yes. Motion carried, 6-0. And now we can vote on the motion, which was moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Olson. And on the question,
Comment, sorry, not a question, but I agree with everything that's been said. When this was released, I was looking at it and I was quite disturbed because, you know, the federal government often talks about creating partnerships with communities and getting more inclusive housing and affordable housing into communities. And that's certainly not what we've seen here. You know, when we first started this process, I did think, you know, I had my own reservations about the fact that 9 million might have been slightly too ambitious. However, you know, there was plenty of opportunity for the CHMC or whatever the organization was to come back and say, you know, we can't give you 9 million, but we can give you 2 million or something like that to get us started. But we've seen none of that, which is very unsettling, especially since we're the 6th largest and one of the fastest growing, you know, communities in New Brunswick. So I just wanted to add my voice of disappointment to that. Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through you to Councillor Miller, just for the record, Sussex has received some HAF funding. They talked about it in council. I don't think it's been announced yet, so that is a non-government riding. And I suspect probably within the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear about another non-government riding that I'm not at liberty to say where that is, but I suspect there's going to be some more news. But your point is certainly well taken, but just for the record, there is one, and there's probably going to be at least 2 in non-federal government ridings, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Councillor Olson, please.
No, nothing.
Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, we're probably not the only municipality sitting around, according to the numbers, sort of licking our wounds a little bit over this issue. I think it's outrageous, and you know, for lots of reasons. As Councillor Donovan points out, we're one of the larger communities in the province. We are very good at tooting our horn about our rate of growth, our building starts, housing starts. We exceed the provincial average on growth. It's an enviable community, to say the least. Objectively speaking, it's enviable. I don't just mean, you know, that's my opinion. I mean, there's sort of empirical evidence to that effect, comparatively. However, that's the way the ball bounces, it seems, for the moment. A question that I had was in relation to, and I don't want to go back and sort of try to put anyone's feet to the fire over this matter, but I think about the consulting firm that we hired to assist us with our application, and I find myself wondering how we arrived at the figure that made up our ask. I don't know that I've ever seen what constituted that total amount that went in as our ask, and I'm just curious about if there's, perhaps more generally, I'll say, is there any kind of postmortem that we get from Dillon Consulting on their take on what has occurred here, or their insight, having assisted us as they did with the development and submission of this, just to create some kind of accountability structure around that project. Thank you.
Mr. Colburn, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Councillor Bigger. So Dillon Consulting was the lead. Obviously, you know, they're part of our planning services, if you will. So that application wasn't sort of Dillon out on their own coming up with numbers. They met with staff, and we had previously to this application, this opportunity arising, took our vacant lands and we ran basically a scenario that said if we were to provide, you know, municipal services to areas that were just sewer service, what would those numbers look like? If we were to provide, you know, both water and sewer to these areas, what would these numbers look like? So that was the basis that sort of started the conversation as in terms of what would be a reasonable number of units that we would anticipate being able to build, you know, over the course, or that you know, the timeline that was a part of this application. Our initial, you know, numbers were fairly high, so we sort of scaled them back. So there was a rationale that went into that number. And we felt that the ask, you got a certain number of dollars per unit that you were going to build. So there was a rationale to it. We looked at, where we are today. If we got these services and if we got this funding and we were able to extend our water line, into the areas according to our water distribution system, looking at, available lands, looking at mixed residential developments, that it was a reasonable number. So we feel from a planning perspective, as was already mentioned, Councillor Donovan had mentioned, we put in an ask. If the ask is there, you put in a reasonable ask. And if they came back and said, well, like was mentioned, we feel that you might be too high, can you scale it back? And that was part of that conversation. So I think the number that was put in was reasonable. And given the number and the funding that's been provided, I think it was a reasonable ask. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Councillor Donovan, please.
Thank you. Just to refresh my memory, because I can't remember, the $150,000 that we had allotted towards, I don't know if it was a plan or for the water system or whatnot, was that dependent on this money, like this money coming through, or was it a separate sort of thing?
I believe Councillor Donovan is referring to a water study that we had. Yes, the streetscape. The money that I think you're talking about was the $40,000 for the housing assessment.
Well, it was. I believe it was 100. Maybe I'm
The
wrong.
150
It was 150 total, and the thought process behind it was if we got the money from the federal housing accelerator, it would have gone back towards that, I believe. But I don't know if this is still continuing now that we've been denied, or if it's like dead in the water, or what the process for that is.
I believe that was a line item. I don't know if Ms. Brandon can help us with that or not, but I believe that was a line item that we.
Not to confuse people, I'm just curious.
No, that was for the, you're right, there was 150,000 for the streetscape and then 40,000 for the housing assessment. Mr. Colburn.
Through you, Your Worship, so there was the $40,000 that was identified in the budget for the housing assessment, which is currently ongoing as part of our municipal plan review. And then to my knowledge, there was a separate line item that looked at a streetscape AT corridor, was an actual separate line item in the 2024 budget. To my knowledge, that wasn't contingent on the accelerator housing fund. It was a separate item.
Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I concur with our planner. It was, I remember Gary had given us some insight about the time frame to develop that sort of streetscape plan that would be needed so that we could sort of get everything done in one fell swoop. And I believe that when we asked for the amount, the 150,000 figure was sort of offered up as probably that's about where we're at. And so I believe that a motion was passed to make it a line item, separate from HAF or whatever.
Ms. Brandon. Your hand is up. She doesn't hear you. Oh, okay.
Seconds behind, she's watching.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I did want to just confirm that that streetscape was a separate line item within the budget, and it was tax funded, and we were going to research if there was any grant opportunities that we could apply for it, but it actually is a separate line item within the budget. And the housing accelerator, the 40,000, that money was coming from the general operating reserve.
Thank you very much. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to point out, and again, it may not help, but just based on the Treasurer's comments, the budget for the province that came out today, they have put some money aside through RDC to help small communities build or enhance existing infrastructure. So I'm just bringing that out. That might be an opportunity for us to explore if we're looking for helping to offset some of that money. Anyway, it's not a lot, but anyway, it showed up today in the budget.
Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention, Councillor Luck. On the question, please vote now. Voting on the motion. Motion carried 6-0. Item number 9A, correspondence. Request for pedestrian crossing control route 119 and the Hampton Road from Mr. George Chapman. You had the information in your packet, and there is a recommendation. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a few questions about this agenda item. First, I want to thank Mr. Chapman for bringing this to our attention. I'm not sure, I guess I have a few questions. One of the things in the staff report, and I wish Mr. Logier was here tonight because I believe he was the one that submitted the staff report, so I might have to direct my questions to Mr. Colburn. But it was mentioned in the staff report that this was, to date, this is the first time we received a formal request to have pedestrian crossings controlled or crosswalks installed at this location. So I guess my question is, you know, when I saw that, it kind of tweaked my interest because when I went back, it was on September the 7th, 2021, so 2.5 years ago, I had submitted a letter to council regarding safe access across each side of Route 119. The rationale for that was, you know, high speeds, 60 to 80 kilometer speeds. You know, and it goes both ways. We've spent millions of dollars updating Hammond River Park, Means Cove Beach House, Means Cove Beach, the playground, a new bike park, new bathrooms. So we have lots of amazing infrastructure over on the east side. So, you know, we want the west siders to head to the east side safely and vice versa. We want all the new development. When you drive around the east side, I don't think there's one kind of small subdivision that doesn't have a new street being put in off of Rockefeller, off of Squire, Benell Drive. There's 2 new, you know, subdivisions going off of Model Farm, so lots of new development on the east side. So again, we're building in that community. So, you know, when I went back and looked at history, after that meeting on the 7th of 2021, you actually wrote a very impassioned plea to a letter on behalf of council, saying that we as council, because we all voted in support of this, strongly feel that public safety was an issue and it needed addressed to ensure safe passage for pedestrians crossing the arterial to access town resources. And that was passed unanimously, and we had requested a meeting. And then back and forth, because it is a provincial highway. And then I guess fast forwarding, because another thing came up on Hampton Road looking for a crosswalk, and that's another provincial designated road, and they wanted a crosswalk. So we got another letter back from the Department of Transportation. And then in that, it kind of, I raised some questions that, well, if we can put a crosswalk there on a provincial road, why can't we put a crosswalk on the arterial? And basically what we were told in the staff recommendation was that rather than approach the province with a non-specific request, the town should wait until the completion of our transportation master plan and any updates to our active transportation plan. This way we can identify actual locations and styles of access that would be considered and have a properly engaged discussion with officials from Department of Transportation. So that was November 2021. So still about 2 years ago. Our master transportation plan was completed in January 2023, including our active transportation plan. So that was over a year ago. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, because this has been an issue, And I'm sorry, Mr. Colburn, that you're here tonight. I guess I'm going to direct my question to you because, you know, we've identified this as an issue and we've been saying it's been an issue for 2.5 years. You know, it is still a concern because, you know, it's a provincial road, but we're in a very unique situation where we have this beautiful town and it's thriving on both sides, but we have a very dangerous road that divides us in half. And we have amazing resources and services on both sides, but right now there is still no safe passage. And I guess, you know, my fear, because I've seen it firsthand, and that's why I brought it up 2.5 years ago, is when we were renting very close to the arterial, I would walk on the arterial, I would run on the arterial, and I would constantly seeing kids running across, parents, you know, pushing their strollers across, elderly, you know, trying to get across because we have resources on both sides. And I assume that council still thinks it's an important issue. And I guess I'm just looking for some direction in terms of, I guess 2.5 years later, we kind of were playing ping pong where we're going to the province and they're volleying it, I guess that's volleyball, volleying it back to us, but still nothing has been done. And I guess my question is why?
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Mr. Colburn, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Locke. So I think the key items to note out of Mr. Lozier's staff report is not so much in terms of the formal requests and all that, but I guess by getting back into the essence of what is a requirement to move things forward. So when we done the transportation master plan, some of our streets were identified as being sort of key collector AT corridors. For example, the Hampton Road, Pettingale Road, Route 119, they were identified as such, and part of that transportation master plan identified basically additional study would be required. What ultimately would that look like if we were to move forward? So at that stage, they identified those routes. As we're well aware, Route 119 is DTI controlled. So the key item in Mr. Lozier's report is DTI doesn't really initiate or get involved in, oh, you need a crosswalk, or, you know, the town should look at doing a crosswalk. It is the town coming to DTI. Part of that coming to DTI is having done, if you will, your homework. You've done the warrant analysis, you've looked at, you know, the warrant analysis or the study indicates that we need a crosswalk, and here's the reasoning. Once you have that level of information and it's been accepted by the town, then you go to DTI and then they will look at it and build from there. So I think the key sort of information in Mr. Lozier's report, as well as the recommendations, it becomes to council whether they wished at this stage to fund a warrant analysis, and I believe the numbers are provided in the staff report of what that will cost. If that gets reviewed by DTI and DTI says, okay, yeah, we support this. This is the infrastructure that you need to meet our, requirements to ensure, safety of pedestrians. And then there's an additional cost on that, whether that's, infrastructure changes or it's new controllers, the signal heads, what that cost will be. So it's almost a two-stage approach. It's your initial study, findings, and here's how we implement the findings or the initial or the required infrastructure, recognizing that neither of those items are in the 2024 budget. So it becomes a decision of council if they wish to direct staff to engage in that warrant analysis and cover the cost in the 2024 budget, or do we recognize there's been an ask and we push it out for consideration and budget deliberations into the next year. So that's, I think, the key elements in that staff report. I think he's indicated the cost, sort of cost. And I do concur and agree with Mr. Lozier in that it's beyond the capacity of staff at this level. I think it would be prudent to reach out to a consultant to do that analysis. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Colburn. I would be prepared to do a motion to do the study now, and then we can make the decision on the funding later, because the sooner we have it, whether we can do it in 2024 or whether we put it in our 2025 budget, but I'd like to get the study done as soon as possible, and then we have option B, because the study itself may take a while, and then DTI. So at least we're progressing, because if we wait till 2025 to do our study, we do our study in the spring, and it keeps going on. So if I'll make that motion that staff proceed with the study in 2024 and bring back the findings from DTI to see what the costs will be. Thank you.
And is the money for that coming from reserves? Or is it going to be done in 2025?
Not 150 grand, buddy.
Well, for now, just say it's from reserve. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Catherine.
Your worship, through you, just clarification on the motion. So staff proceed with getting the study done now and bring back the findings, did you say to DTI or?
Sorry, my words aren't very good, but basically do the study, and from the study, Mr. Colburn was saying they will tell us what it's gonna cost us, what kind of signals we have to put in, and from there, there'll be a costing associated. And then we can determine whether we wanna do it in 2024 or do it in 2025. But at least we'll have the numbers for our 2025 budget, which is key. So then we'll know the exact amount we're looking for. We're close.
Thank you. And Councillor Bigger, were you seconding that? So,
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, actually, I had a question, but I would defer to Councillor Luck if she would like to attach her second to that. I'll second the motion, certainly. But I did have a question as well, if that's appropriate. I just, perhaps I'll ask through you, Your Worship, to our town planner, as he points out, the staff report from Mr. Lozier does kind of lay out some various numbers and costs. And I see here on the top of the second page of his report, we've been advised the study would be in the range of $4,000 to $5,000 once completed. I notice in the bottom of the first page, it says that the most recent warrant analysis completed by the town at Millennium Drive cost approximately $2,500 and was to review only the signal timing for that intersection. The overall tenor, I would say, I guess I'd characterize this report, is that these analyses and determinations are principally made according to requests being brought forward by citizens. As Councillor Luck sort of suggests, she's sort of creating a through line of really this is not the first time we've ever heard somebody mention the idea of having, crossing signals for pedestrians on the arterial. And so I just sort of wonder, well, what drove, I mean, I'm sure there are reasons outside of citizens just bringing it up, residents just bringing it up to us, making a complaint or a suggestion or whatever. But I just wonder what drove that decision around Millennium Drive signal timing. If the argument tends to be here, according to this report, and I don't expect anyone to be able to defend Mr. Lozier's report in his absence, but if the argument tends to be this has got to come up from residents before we can even consider doing it, and there's an analysis that we have to do, well, where did that request come from for the one for Millennium Drive? I know there's an overall redesign of the Millennium Drive interchange there, but I assume that's the one we're referring to down by McDonald's, but perhaps we could, does that make any sense what I'm asking? Thank you.
Mr. Colburn.
Thank you, Worship. Through your Worship to Councillor Bigger. My memory serves me correctly, which, as you get older, what happens to that? I believe it was initiated by the residents in our, in the mobile home park. A lot of them work in that area, as well as people that work in the restaurant, in the retail area, as well as the Shaniks, and just the safety concerns of getting across. Some of them were crossing at the intersection, some were going down further to cross over onto Parkside with the off ramps coming off there. So you've got speeding vehicles coming up to the lights to slow down. So if a memory serves me correctly, that was sort of the initial ask and where that started from.
Thank you. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Mr. Colburn. I guess one other question I have is, if it's been an issue at Millennium Drive, it's an issue at Hampton Road, it is, I brought up the issue as well down the entire, as we get a little bit further down, there's less traffic, but even at the arterial, it's not the arterial, the roundabout. It's very dangerous in that area, and it's even cut out, and it looks like we're eventually gonna get crosswalks at some point, but we don't have them. I'm just wondering, in terms of, doing the analysis, is there savings in bulk, in the sense that, are we gonna be here next year saying, well, now we want you to look at the roundabout, and we want, could we, if we're gonna do the assessment, could we assess 119 and say, here's the best locations? Because we know that both sides are growing. We have, again, so many new resources on the east side that, this summer kids are going to be running across, because there is no safe passage. So I'm just wondering, being kind of proactive and looking at further down by the Qplex, or, the roundabout, where it looks like it would be easy just to paint a few lines to kind of at least distinguish it's a crossing area for hopefully people whipping through the roundabout. So again, I don't know if that quadruples the cost, or if it's just incremental because we already have the consultant and we're asking them for something. So at least we have the data to go to the province, and it might not be tomorrow that we put them all in, but we have the data and the agreement, and then we can budget for it over time. If that makes sense.
Thank you. Mr. Coburn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Councillor Luck. So the roundabout, as part of the design of the roundabout and construction, there were curb drops put in and the ability to support pedestrian movement through that area. That was part of that design. We have, as indicated in the staff report, the analysis and the look at Millennium Drive, which is currently under review. So right now we're looking at potentially the Route 119 100 intersection, and then the only one outside of that is Means Cove. So that would be a direction of council, whether they wish staff to look at doing multiple or just focusing on the Route 119 100 intersection. And again, that would escalate the cost to what degree. I'm not prepared to answer that at this stage, but again, it would be a direction of council. The alternative is to look at requirements, put out a request for interest, and see what numbers come back, and then bringing that back to council for direction. That's another option as well.
I'm referring back to the procedural course that we had this afternoon, and somebody is going to have to rattle some of the brain cells here. I've already heard from Councillor Luck a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, and I've also heard from Councillor Bigger 2 or 3 times. You're still in the question period? That's why I asked for somebody to remind me.
Just asking questions, we're not really trying to. I thank you. I just had one question actually based on what Mr. Colburn had said. So we already have an assessment for the roundabout, is that right? You said that was already completed when we were doing the round. So we technically have the data, so we'd at least be able to go back to like the province with like our bag full of these are our needs. Okay, perfect, thanks.
So the answer to that question was yes? Yeah. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say I appreciate Mr. Colburn's insight there about the Millennium Drive signal change or signal timing analysis review there. It just seems to me that if there's a modification that we should make there to assist hundreds of people that live in the trailer park, that if we're imagining thousands of people that live on that east side of the arterial who would like to make AT part of their daily lives, coming across to visit us over on Quispamsis Hill or whatever, that it certainly seems like a reasonable thing to pursue a study along this line. And again, as Councillor Luck has pointed out, there's a bit of a history here of this issue hanging around virtually since she and I and the other freshman class arrived. So, thank you.
Thank you. On the question, please vote now. Oh, would you like me to read it? Okay. Could you just turn it a little bit this way? So that the motion reads, staff proceed with getting a consultant's analysis done now with funding from the reserve funds for pedestrian crossing at the Route 100 and Route 119 intersection and bring back the findings to determine costs for the budget considerations either in 2024 or 2025. And that was moved by Councillor Miller and seconded by Councillor Bigger. Does that accurately describe your motion? On the question, Councillor Thompson.
So this motion is to have funding coming from the reserve funds. So what consultant study are we doing? That's what I don't understand.
Mr. Colburn?
Through your worship to Councillor Thompson, so the study would be a warrant analysis to determine the pedestrian crossings at the particular intersection. So you're looking at the number of pedestrians, and then looking at what would be safe, ensuring safe movements through that intersection for pedestrians. Is it Route 100 and 119 by the Junction driving range, by when they're on the Hampton Road? Yep. So then it would be looking at what level of infrastructure is required to ensure safe movements. And if I may, through your worship, just regarding if I can, the motion, if we refer back to Mr. Lozier's staff report, it gives an estimated cost of approximately $5,000. The motion doesn't contain a maximum number or value that probably should be added.
Yes, the amount should be added to the motion. Yes. Was Mr. Logier's maximum between 25 and 30,000? Was that, do I remember correctly?
For the upgrades.
Okay, for the
The
upgrades.
assessment is analysis.
Did you get it? How much was
What is the maximum for the?
Okay. Councillor Miller?
Sorry, your worship, just another clarification, should say operational reserve versus reserve, yeah.
Up to a maximum of 5,000?
From operational reserve, yeah.
Up to a maximum of 5,000. Is that correct?
Yes. On the question,
If you refresh, you should be able to see it.
if you would like to see the motion on your screen, just refresh your screen. I'll ask one more time on the question. Councillor Luck?
Can I just make one request? It's more so around the warrant. My worry is that one of the pieces, as Mr. Colburn had pointed out, is traffic, and the high school is there. So if this is done in the summer, it's going to greatly impact traffic. So I would love it during school times, just so that the number is more accurate. So hopefully we don't do it in the summer when the kids at the high school aren't around, because again, I think they're probably crossing quite often to go to daily. So I'm just putting that out there so we don't get the wrong data.
During school season.
So Councillor Miller, you made the motion. Can we amend that by adding during the school year? Whether or not they can get consultants between now and June or back in September?
As soon as possible, really.
Thank you. Councillor Miller?
Oh, I just said,
All right. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you. Item 9B, Petition from Hazelton Drive residents requests to investigate cause and rectify flooding in Millennium Drive, Hazelton Drive area. And there are recommendations there. Councillor Thompson.
I would move that we refer the petition to the engineering staff for a site analysis and assessment.
It's been moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question. Councillor Olson.
No.
Thank you. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you. Item 9C, UMNB, Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick, letter to provincial government, re SNB insert, included in the 2024 property tax bills. Request to local government to send template letter. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I'd move that council support UMNB in its efforts for a new fiscal framework in New Brunswick that includes more education and awareness on the role that local governments play in their respective communities, and that staff be authorized to finalize the template letter and forward it to Minister Mary Wilson of Service New Brunswick to officially add Quispamsis voice to the UMNB's recent letter regarding the SMB insert included with the 2024 property tax bills, with copies forwarded to MLA Higgs and applicable ministers.
It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. As for those that were here in the last meeting, would be against this letter because 100% of our taxes, except for the assessment part, is due to our budget. So if the assessments didn't go up this year, we would have had to, and we kept our budget as is, we would have had to increase our tax rate by 14 cents. So since the assessments went up so much, we didn't increase our tax rate, but we still increased what the residents pay by 10%. So I find this letter appropriate. Sorry, the insert appropriate, not this letter. So I'll be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 4-2. Nay votes for Councillor Miller and Councillor Olson. Motion carried. Nine C, correspondence from Councillor Miller. Item number 1, D1, request for update on Quispamsis website design. And you had that in your package, and I did speak with our communications manager, and that is set for April. There have been licensing issues and a few other glitches along the way that consumed a lot of time and a lot of work in order to iron out. So that will be coming in April. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And my question is, because I was looking through some of the budgets, obviously we were all hoping to get this out earlier, but what is the total cost of this has been for us so far? I saw some information on how much we paid for web design. So what's been the total cost for our companies that have been helping us with this? I'm just wondering where we're at for the web design costing.
Thank you for the question. We may have to source that. We don't have that right at our fingertips. Whoops. Go ahead.
If we don't have it now, that's fine, just for next meeting. I'd just be curious because I saw couple of transfers and I saw certain numbers that said web design. So I'm just trying to figure out how much has our web design cost us so far. So thanks. Yeah, next meeting is fine. There's no,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, thank you. Item 9D2 from Councillor Miller, request for clarification on budget motion from October 24th, 2023 special meeting. Councillor Miller.
Sorry, Your Worship, on the last one, do we have to do a receive and file? We didn't do a receive and file on the last one, so I'll just move to receive and file. We don't have to? Sorry, I missed the meeting earlier, so, okay, perfect.
Okay. Just looking to see if Ms. Brandon is still up there. So the item number 2 is request for clarification on budget motion from October 24th, 2023 special meeting. And Ms. Brandon, our town treasurer, I'm going to call on you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead. You're on.
Through your worship. So the budget process happens over a number of different meetings. And what I did at the November 7th council meeting was I went through our summary of changes, which listed all of the impacts from the October meeting that we were doing, plus any of the additional changes that we needed to do. And as we were going through and doing this, we were updating all of our reserves, and there was an item noted, and it was on our statement of changes to adjust the 2024 CCBF portion and reduce the reserve transfer, and then adjust 2025 as well. And this was done because this would have only left us about 127,000 in our capital reserve. And in our 5-year capital plan, we had 2024 and 2025 in there for our CCBF contribution. Again, we still don't have confirmation of our CCBF, but what we did in order to balance everything off was just move the 2025 CCBF funding from the 2025 capital budget, bring it into 2024, thereby just reducing the amount that we would have had to have withdrawn from the reserve. And again, I did go through all of this in summary at the November, or in line item detail actually, at the November 7th meeting. And so, yes, we have the all-day budget meeting. There's motions, there's all sorts of things happening, typically on a consensus basis. And then what we do is, as we're going through and finalizing things, I specifically go through line item by line item, any of the changes that we've done to get us to where we were lining up for our ending tax rate. So yes, there was changes, but we did go through it as part of the presentation on November 7th. I've gone back and I've reviewed all of the YouTube video from that, and very clearly I detailed all of the differences that were in the budget. Sorry, I'm really having a hard time hearing you, so I hope that kind of answers the question, but every line item within the budget has been reviewed, and the final budget that went forward at the November 21st meeting accounts for everything.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Brandon.
you.
I'm going to go to Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through Your Worship, thank you, Ms. Brandon. I guess my concern is, and I was just shown, it's in the line item, but it's on page 195 of 200 and some. I don't recall, I'll have to go through the November 7th meeting and see if it was actually pointed out. Being in a pile of documents, I've seen it there, but I don't recall talking about it. So I'm going to go look at the thing, because I don't recall us talking about that, because there are two major changes. One, that was a change, and that's fine. Well, it's not fine, but then later on, the next meeting, we voted to increase the tax rate another 2.5 cents to another $600 and some thousand into reserve. So the motion was made. There should have been a note, and I'm technically or supposedly chairman of the finance committee. I was not called. Nobody told me. I had no idea. I didn't and again, I'm gonna have to watch this because I don't recall talking about, oh, we moved the CCB from 400,000 to 800,000. I don't remember that. I don't remember them saying we moved the reserve from 2.25 million down to 1.8. I don't remember that. So I'm gonna have to look through this, but it's just dumbfounding that we spend all this time to go through, do the motions, and it didn't matter. So if the motion wasn't going to be accepted, there should have been a whole thing, hey, we'd like to do this, but we'd like to not. So then the motion was the motion, so we should have had a 2/3 to vote to overturn the motion and to change the motion. I don't believe that happened. So you can't change a budget, I know that, but our process is broken. Our budget process, in my opinion, is terrible. So this is just a part of it. We got our stuff way too late, but that'll be a discussion for next meeting. But thank you for the explanation. I don't agree with it, so. And that's why I was voting against borrowing so much money, because how come the borrowing didn't change? Like what anyways, it's, I'm gonna have to watch November 7th, because unless somebody else here remembers us rescinding the motion and everything else, it didn't.
I don't believe, Councillor Locke, Councillor Miller, that we had to rescind a motion because the package of the budget is open until we make the final decision. And whether you were here, that's the way it's always been. That's the way we've always done it.
You can change the motion. You can vote differently.
Mr. Kennedy, I'm going to let Mr. Kennedy speak to this.
Just a couple of things, Your Worship. That was discussed on the November 7th meeting, and as the treasurer mentioned, she did go back and watch that on our YouTube page today. It starts at about the 39-minute mark, and she's going through the issues that were raised at the October 24th meeting. I know since we've gone to the day-long open budget session to make this as open and transparent as we could for our residents, going back to the Saturday sessions probably 8 or 9 years ago now, sort of the discussion through that, and I know from the clerk's perspective, when we would dissolve into committee of the whole, just a mover, no seconder on the motions and whether they should actually be motions or whether they should actually be consensus-based. And ultimately, we had always said the budget is fluid until it's formalized and the final vote is there. And an example of that comes to me off the top of my head was last year or the year before, when the civic relations budget had been passed. Motion was move the civic relations budget into the budget. The next step, it was dusted and done. I believe it was Councillor Bigger, who wasn't at that meeting, came at the next meeting and said, just hang on a second, Your Worship. I think Shining Horizons should get more money than was actually approved in the earlier step. And council agreed that it was a worthwhile venture and accepted Councillor Bigger's motion to add more money in. So that's sort of where that discussion has come through. But when you do get the opportunity to watch that meeting on November 7th, it was quite clearly stated by the treasurer at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Item number 3, request for verbal updates. Update on Qplex regional facility or credit. Previous response from Minister Savoy, August 2nd, 2023. And it's the same as before, and that was the answer that I delivered in the past, is that the Qplex does not fall into the criteria for a regional facility. And when it was brought before the board of directors, because I wanted to make sure that I crossed all my T's and dotted my I's, they were not interested in entertaining that, and that's where that decision is made. And your next one under that, Councillor.
Thank you, Worship. So I guess my question on that is, I do recall that we saw this note from Minister Savoy in September. I got that. But also, originally, it was on the list and it got taken off. And without talking to council first, our representatives have the right to, but that was yourself and our acting CAO, took it off the list. And so, of course, nobody wants to put it back on because it's going to cost some money. So I went looking through the minutes. So I'm trying to find the minutes where it was presented back to them to reconsider on the list. I went through the regional facilities and I can't find any minutes. So I'd like to know when it was presented. And I'll also be asking next meeting, just if it was part of the regional facilities, how much money would that have will save us? That'll be on my next list. But I'm just trying to see, I went through the minutes, I can't find the minutes. Like, where do I find the minutes of regional facilities to see that it has been submitted and we need to talk about it, because we're getting hooped. But anyways, thanks.
And the 2025 budget items, garbage pickup and compost, apartment buildings and mobile home parks, staff report from acting CAO.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just further to the staff report, as of May 1st, circular materials under the provincial government's auspices will be responsible for recycling throughout New Brunswick. Into Quispamsis, there are some areas that aren't all coming under that umbrella on May 1st of this year. It's a phased approach, but we are of the understanding that they are working on securing an agreement with a private contractor, probably one we're quite familiar with because they seem to be one of the only games in town, and it has no impact on garbage or compost. That still remains budget items for the municipality, so the only change will be to recycling, and it really shouldn't have much of a change at all to our residents, with the potential, and it's a slight potential that there could be a change in the date, that you may get garbage collection on a different day than recycling. But we're not anticipating that, but that potential does exist, Your Worship.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. I guess what I'm thinking about is the recycling is going to be taken care of by the province now. I think that's fabulous. But if you look at the buildings and you look at compost, I don't know if that's something that we would entertain talking to Faro about on our behalf for like apartment buildings. We don't want to get into the garbage pickup there because apartment buildings have lots of change and people put a lot of things out at the end of their lease. But I'm just trying to look at it as a more inclusive. The apartment buildings, they pay taxes too. They pay property taxes. The mobile home park pays them as well. I know they got a private contractor. I don't know if they actually do compost with the private contractor now. So it's more or less, we're talking about a better, greener municipality. I just didn't know if composting, and it's not like we have 400 apartment buildings. It would just a thought. I did get a call from a couple of apartment dwellers that were asking, hey, can I drop off my recycles at your house because they don't have it here? But that'll be fixed. So it was just, compost is a smaller one in some degrees, but it's just a thought, because if you're adding just compost pickup, it may be just a thought. Anyways, thank you for your update.
Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I find that point quite interesting that Councillor Miller brings up. I live in an apartment building here in town, and the garbage room is down in the underground parking area, and the recyclables section of that is, far smaller than the garbage portion of it, and the compost storage section exists not at all. And so it might be interesting I wonder what would be the implication of sort of encouraging development to include that as part of their design. I take the point about how property taxes are being paid by the owners of those buildings. I believe the property tax on the Valley Ranch building where I live was $205,000 or something dollars. So perhaps that's something that should be factored into the way that we approach development going forward, that should be considered as part of. Now, not all development, of course, it's not appropriate maybe for all development, but like if you think about a fourplex or something like that, it doesn't really matter. But in terms of, multi-unit, like kind of multi-level buildings like ours, there's no encouragement to really separate that sort of material out en masse kind of around the building. We have, there's one tenant in our building who gladly collects bottles. You take the bag of bottles and cans down and put it in their parking space and then they look after it because it goes to a charitable cause. But anyway, I just take that point, and I think that would be really interesting to consider making part down the line of our discussion with developers about making that a part of how, you know, we manage compost for those units, especially if we imagine that to become a fast-growing segment of our housing solutions here in the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. And I just want to remind Council that thoughts and ideas and so on are one thing, but if there's an action that has to be taken, that has to be put in a motion. So for further reference down the road, if this comes up and a developer's agreement comes up, that might be the time when you want to put that into a developer's agreement, because as I said, we can't go on thoughts and ideas and expect action to be taken. Item number 10, bylaws. Oh, I'm sorry. Average assessments and equality in assessments. Acting CAO Kennedy to provide verbal response. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not quite sure what the equality in assessments entails, Councillor Miller, to be honest, but obviously that's the province that is responsible for the assessments of all properties in New Brunswick. They charge our residents and other residents a cost of assessment that is part of your property tax bill. It was a windfall of just over $15 million this year to the provincial government, I believe. But in terms of our own numbers, we've just received the 2024 numbers recently when the property tax bills went out at the first of the month. So as you can appreciate, Your Worship, that's quite an information dump. There's a lot of data there for our staff to go through. So they started that process. But in terms of 2023 data, 72% of the single-family homes in Quispamsis were assessed between $200,000 and $400,000, $200,000 and $400,000, and the average assessment was $334,000 last year, and that assessment comes from single and two-family homes only. It excludes vacant land, trailer parks, and apartment buildings with 3 or more units. So in 2023, just to give you some more numbers to chew on, in Quispamsis, the range, the assessed values went from $18,900 all the way up to $1.241 million was the highest assessed house in Quispamsis in 2023. And obviously that number is going to go up in 2024. So when we get those numbers crunched, we'll be happy to share them with council, but they are some interesting numbers. In terms of this discussion and sort of the previous discussion where council voted to send a letter to the provincial government potentially arguing with the taxpayers' money that was spent on the newspaper ads, basically trying to take the provincial government's position that you can call your municipal government and blame them for the assessments in your tax rate. And Your Worship, you and I will be heading to Fredericton tomorrow for the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick Advocacy Days. There are meetings scheduled, group meetings with the leader of the Green Party and one of his caucus members, the leader of the official opposition and one of her caucus members, and then with Premier Higgs and Minister Savoy to discuss this very issue. And it doesn't impact Quispamsis as much as it does other municipalities, but certainly the issue is that we're not free to set our own tax rate for non-residential. And certainly we see a lot of that in the media coming from St. John, that if they were able to charge quote unquote industry, then they would be able to lower the amount of tax that their residents pay. So it's a little bit different here in Quispamsis because of the fact that we are so heavily dependent on residential property. But Your Worship, we're going there tomorrow as part of the union, so we will be there to support the other municipalities in that, and certainly we support those calls to change the Property Tax Act to make it more fair for municipalities. That was the next promised step within local governance reform when all the amalgamations took place a couple of years ago, and that step hasn't come through yet. But I think that's one of the messages that the union as a whole will be taking to government and the opposition parties tomorrow, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, and I appreciate it. So, because I was struggling to find out how our average, because when I look at the houses being built and I looked around, I was seeing quite high numbers. Where I did find some inequalities without pointing it, and it's not private, because you can go look at it, SNB. I can see a residence assessed at $36,000, and right beside it, one's assessed at 100 and some thousand. One got sold for 100 and some, and it's still assessed at 25. Like, I'm not saying that people, I just want everybody to be treated equally. So when they just say, we put it up by 10%, and then I found other ones where somebody's house was assessed at 400 and some thousand, and I know the house, and the people beside it just sold for 320. I mean, they're appealing theirs. So there doesn't seem to be a lot of, because I always say it's whatever you buy it is what your assessment should be. Well, I can point an example where somebody paid 16 times more the assessment of a house, of an area, and their assessment is still 16 times lower than what they paid, or 15 times lower, 10 times lower, whatever. But I mean, you keep looking through it. So it's just, my question is, they just say they have a blanket way of doing it, but you know, if I live here and Frank lives there, I'm not going to squeal on my neighbor, say they got to pay more, but I just want us all to be treated equally. Like that's kind of my thing, is everybody be treated equally. So, and the assessments are a problem. I like that part of the letter. I agree with 150%, because they're all over the map. But it's just, they'll say one thing, it's what your house worth, and some people's houses go up to what they sell it, and some people's don't. So there's something wrong. That's just a comment. But thank you for bringing at least all this stuff up about assessment. So that was my inequality message, and you answered all the other stuff. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Moving on to bylaws, item number 10A. Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move council refer the draft proposed procedural bylaw number 064 to an upcoming open committee of the whole meeting for review and discussion prior to consideration of third and final reading.
It's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question. Councillor Olson. Nothing, okay. Please vote now. Motion carried 6-0. Item number 11, new business. 11A, 2024 application for financing, fire station number 2 renovations, staff report from Assistant Treasurer. Ms. Young.
So this is an OIC that we had received back in 2002, as indicated in my memo, and we're now just going to get the debenture in the spring call that the province is doing. The OIC originally was requested for $1,785,000. They allowed us $1,750,000 for 20 years, and the other $35,000 was for 5 years, and it had to do with the 5-year one was for furniture and fixtures. So we're not borrowing that $35,000 for 5 years, because it just doesn't make sense to do that. So we're only requesting the $1,750 for the 20 years, as indicated in our original application in 2022.
Thank you. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I'd move that be it resolved that the clerk and/or treasurer and/or mayor be authorized to issue and sell to the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation a municipality of Quispamsis debenture in the principal amount of $1.75 million on such terms and conditions as are recommended by the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation. And be it resolved that the municipality of Quispamsis agree to issue post-dated checks payable to the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation as and when they are requested in payment of principal and interest charges on the above debenture.
It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 6-0. Item number 12, reports. Councillor Olson.
Move we receive and file reports, Your Worship.
It's been moved by Councillor Olson to move and receive reports. Councillor, and seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 6-0. Item number 13, business arising from Committee of the Whole. Councillor Thompson. No business arising from Committee of the Whole. Your light was on. Go ahead, Councillor
I
Thompson.
know, I'm ready to adjourn.
Okay. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question.
We still make the minutes.
Motion, just raise your hands, please. Okay, motion carried 6-0. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice night.